All right. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good morning. It's almost noon, but it is a beautiful morning indeed. The skies are clear, brilliant clouds above our heads today, and I'm quite optimistic for a very good day. So today we are gathered to talk about the role of CSOs, non-profits, and NGOs in achieving the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So together with us today, we have the one and only Puan Sharin Shariza binti Dato' Abdul Ghani, the CEO of Yayasan Sejahtera, our CEO. And we have Professor Dato' Dr. Madeline Burma, Fellow of Academy of Science Malaysia, ASM. We have Puan Nelly Francis Sharia, CEO of Yayasan Petronas, Puan Nadia Hanim Abdul Latif, co-founder of OpIS International, and Encik Easy Rudin, Director of Public Engagement, UN Global Compact Network Malaysia and Brunei. And with us today, will be moderating the panel session is also the one and only and electrifying Encik Hafiz Muhammad Amirul, consultant and of strategic planning for Mercy Malaysia. So maybe a little background about the UN SDGs or the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. It was in 2015 when the SDGs were kind of officially launched and accepted by, I believe, was more than 170 countries, right? There are 17 SDGs in total. We're gonna go deeper on all, maybe not all 17 SDGs, but the SDGs that are relevant to our work in eradicating poverty and the ones that are connected to it. But so it was in 2015 when the SDGs was officially launched or announced to the world, but the work, I believe, started way back in 1992 at the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, with more than 178 countries that adopted the Agenda 21. And then later, I believe it became the Millennium Declaration or Millennium Development Goals. So without further ado, perhaps it will following the tradition of Yayasan Sejahtera's IDEP webinars, I invite Puan Sharin Shariza to give a welcoming speech and a bit of introduction today.
Assalamualaikum, salam sejahtera. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Pau, and thank you for tuning in this Saturday morning. Alhamdulillah, we have put together an amazing set of speakers, and of course, our keynote by Professor Dr. Madeline Burma, and all the partners of Yayasan Sejahtera. Our collaboration is in various forms, and we're so honored to have them here. So just a little bit of an intro to Yayasan Sejahtera as well as SDGs. Pau has already sort of given you a bit of an overview, and I'll just do a short one so that then it sort of sets the stage or the context of our discussion today. The assumption of all of us in the panel is that everybody who tuned in has got some level of appreciation and understanding, and in fact doing the great work that connects to SDGs. But as a way of introduction, we would also be more inclusive for those who are maybe not so aware as yet. Just a little bit about our work, especially in relation to the SDGs. Haris, could you just put up that one slider? That's the intro slide and how we connect to SDGs. Okay, while Haris does the slide, let me just welcome everybody. Yayasan Sejahtera has been around for since 2009, so 10 years, 12 years and a bit. And we've been doing this work and looking at community development. I think most of us who are in the development phase will understand that community development is somewhat a long-term strategy. And we've done well in the work that we do, but there is always room for us to grow and improve. So I wanted to share this Sejahtera graduation model. For those of you who have sort of followed our webinar series and seen this model a couple of times, my apologies. But those who are new to the session, this is our graduation model, and something that we created at the point of our 10th anniversary, because we wanted to see how we can sharpen our work in Yayasan Sejahtera, and then really look at how we link the things that we do, and together with partners. We don't profess to be doing it all alone. We can't anyway. So together with our partners, we have this graduation model, and where we start is, of course, looking at equitable access to very basic needs, basic services. That's the first step. And we move along our communities on this sort of trajectory, where we secure the basic needs for them. So for example, in our projects in Sabah, those who don't have water, the equitable access to water would be a project that we start, a water project, and then we secure to ensure that the water supply is not disrupted severely. And then after we've done that, we move to another stage where we begin to start economic activities with this community, and to ensure that they are productive in a way that it is giving them the power and the control to sort of define their destiny and work towards a more sort of holistic development. And once they are secured in that aspect, there's increased choices and access. So when you have a stable source of income, you have access to education for your children, you have access to healthcare and other services, then you are able to actually look at other things that would enhance your quality of living. So that's increased access, choices and access. And the last bit is the pink part of the whole model is actually creating a just and inclusive society. So we work with our communities and we work with them, paling kurang about 18 months to about 24 months or so. And we continue to actually then, be in touch with them. So how do we link back to the SDGs? These are the SDGs. And as you know, there are 17 of them. So for Yayasan Sejahtera, we mapped out where the indicators or the SDGs that's more relevant and relatable to us or connected to us. And of course, there's others that is, on climate change, responsible consumption, water resources, life underwater and things like that. So Yayasan Sejahtera subscribes to the SDGs, and these are, the indicators, like I said, that we link ourselves to, and there's a lot more. And with our partnership with different organizations that represented here, we want to actually grow the impact that we have currently to sort of ensure that there is sustainability in our work, sustainability in the communities that we engage with. And of course, our sort of end goal is a just and inclusive society. So that's a snapshot of Yayasan Sejahtera and the SDGs, and then we're going to go, into the discussion a bit more throughout this morning session. So I'll close here. Thank you, Pao. Over to you.
Thank you, Puan, for your introduction and a bit of briefing about how our work at Yayasan Sejahtera is actually connected to the UN SDGs. Right, so we are launching at the moment, we are launching a few poll questions to kind of gauge the understanding and the awareness of the UN SDGs at the moment. I would implore the audience to kindly take the poll. There will be in total 3 questions. While you are attending to the polls, perhaps it's best if we move on straight to the panel session. And for that, I would like to invite Encik Hafiz Amirul to take over and introduce the rest of the speakers today. Over to you, Hafiz.
Thank you, Pao. Thank you, everyone. Good morning. Good. Salam Sejahtera. A very interesting topic. Not only interesting, but important, I guess. Not that it's because it's sexy. It's getting sexier and sexier because people keep on talking about it day by day. It's a different case 6 years back when it was first introduced, but now the traction is getting more gain, especially among the public sector and also the non-profit sector. And that's the reason why we are here today, hoping that we can contribute as a whole force from the third sector can contribute more meaningfully in achieving and accelerating progress towards the SDG. Well, the bad news is that we are still behind the target, but not only us, Malaysia, the whole wide world. And also, no thanks to COVID that make things worse. And to frame the perspective in a more objective way, today we will have a panel discussion from panelists which have been introduced by Pao just now. But before that, we would love to hear from Professor Dr. Madeline Burma, the Fellow of Academic Science of Malaysia, to address a keynote session on this whole issue of SDG and how to make it relevant for the country, for CSOs, and for everyone, so that it is being treated way beyond ticking the boxes, way beyond achieving KPIs and compliance of achieving some sort of a formal form, but to give meaningful contribution to the nation and society. With that, persilakan Professor Dr. Madeline.
Thank you very much, Hafiz. Can you hear me? Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Now, I'm not even sure whether I need a mic, with my kind of voice, having, in a class of about 200 to 300 on a Friday afternoon, late afternoon. This is the way I whisper to my class. Okay, my name is Madeline Burma. In case some of you may get confused, I always introduce myself. My name is Madeline Anak Burma, and I'm not from Myanmar. Okay, that's number one. Because I used to have this kind of like, the initial phase, a lot of people think that I was one of those, either a Rohingya, but I don't look like one, but I am Madeline Burma. Okay, Hafiz, how long do I have, Hafiz? 10 minutes?
Well,
you need to give me time. Knowing Madeline.
It's written here 20 minutes, tapi
okay, I will
okay.
Okay, thank you, Hafiz. Sherin, thank you very much, Sherin. You've been very, I mean, you never, I don't know what to say, because every time I invited you and now you're inviting me, we kind of share a lot of things in common. But one thing I do know that we do share one thing in common is that poverty, somehow or another, whenever we meet and, just go around, and then there's always what we're talking about, putar, teh tarik, and it will be, what is it about poverty? Okay, now, I would like to provide the context for my presentation. Okay, number one, my background, I have 32 years of experience in the university. So I am one of those boring lecturers who like to use PowerPoint. We use power and point only. Okay, that's number one. So number two, I will share my experience based on my academic research. I am very much like Hafiz was saying just now. You said it's not sexy, but to me that's the only my bread and butter. Nobody wants to study about poverty in the university because you don't get it published that much. People like to do modeling because you can get your work done and get your article published, naik pangkat cepat. So there goes Madeline. But then number three, I am in Iban, as I told you, one of the orang asal from Sarawak, and I always think that if people of my standing, given the fact that I have gone to university, both my parents have never been to school. So the fact that I've been to university, so I said, I must share some stories. Cerita, I'm not talking about academic exercise here. So that's basically the background. And the last aspect to it is that now I'm working with Suhakam. So my perspective, I started, first being Iban in the community. We never know what is all these MDGs, SDGs. Nobody talks about it, but we know that something is wrong with our river. We used to have fish in our river. We used to be able to go to our forest to get our food. That we know. But now everything is in sardine dalam tin. Kalau nak makan ikan, we can beli from from the kedai. Okay, that's basically it. So that's the context. Panjang cerita orang Iban ni. Okay, can I have siapa tadi? Hafiz, can you help me with my PowerPoint, Hafiz? Haris, sorry. Hafiz pula. Okay. Wah, kami cantik lagi PowerPoint I tu. Puji sendiri ya. Masuk lift, klik button. Okay. Role of civil societies to achieve sustainable development goals, Madeline Burma. Okay, continue, Hafiz. All right. There are two parts to my presentation. So number one, I will talk about what do I think about the role of role of civil society to achieve SDGs. So I will give the standard one just to refresh, because I would like to go to the next part, which is part 2, where I would like to share with you the work that we have been doing and the things that I have learned from. Kenapa dia belum melompat ni, Hafiz? Apa dia pening? Okay, basically I think all of us here know what are the general roles of civil society. Number one, the very important one is, of course, we represent voice of people. It's not ordinary people. It's not the people in the corridor of powers. It is people in the corridor of the forest, dekat sungai, dekat lorong-lorong di Chowkit, lorong-lorong di mana-mana lah, ya. So these are the voices I'm referring to when I said voices of the people. Okay, that's about poverty. Number 2, I'm sure many of you know, it's about advocacy and lobbying. So I know there are people who are really, really good at advocacy and really good at lobbying. Number 3, I don't know why they use the word watchdog. Ini not Sharia compliant ni, but the word is watchdog. Okay, that peranan. Okay, hold on. I need to close this. Something pop up. Okay. Number 4, research and policy analysis. So I think this is one aspect, Sharin. I think many of the NGOs in Malaysia, we are still quite behind in terms of research and policy analysis. Many of them do conduct their own research, in-house research. However, this research are not well, shared with the public, or even with the top policymakers. But they are, of course, like my Sejahtera, Sejahtera you all ada, and a few of the big NGOs memang ada. Of course, kita tengok Petronas memang adalah, although it's in-house, but we do have access to it. And then number 5, involvement in what we call horizontal government mechanism. This is participatory governance. Number 6, in multilateral governance, that is, they are involved in planning. So these are some of the things. And then networking, of course, horizontal networking, vertical networking. I think this is what we all call social capital. And number 8, you build capacity. This is also another aspect that I think where we, Sabah and Sarawak, we are still lacking. Many of us are not really aware of what is happening. We do know that there is a need for NGOs, but we do not know how to go about doing it. I remember participating in a few several years. I participated in CSW in New York, in the United Nations, and that's where I see a lot of women NGOs participating in how to do lobby, how to do advocacy work, how to do a lot of things. And I don't see any Malaysian, not that many lah, and I see from India, from Africa, from Latin America, that are there in international organization, participating. Even Indonesia, I must say. And 9, campaigns, program, and movement on specific issues lah. Itu nanti I cerita. Okay, continue. Teruskan. Okay, now we, as you all have discussed earlier, the SDGs. You have highlighted it is 2015 or 2016. Okay, so what happened is that one of the things about SDG is that all the governments in the world are saying that yes, they are expected to achieve the SDGs by 2030. But as we know, it is not legally binding. So this is where the role of NGOs have a very important role to play. Okay, continue, Aris. Hafiz, Aris, nama dia. Aris, yes. Continue. Okay, so the issue here is that when we look around, and when we if you look at the kind of debates that has been going on, especially if you look if you sit in government with the government agencies, something like that, they tend to be talking about goals and indicators. Because we love, because it's easy, easy to, maybe there are indicators that they need to achieve, just like exam. Malaysians are very exam oriented. So KPIs and things like that. So the discussion has always been about goals and indicators, but very little, or rather very limited attention has been given to the roles and responsibilities of the different stakeholders in achieving SDGs. So I think I must congratulate Sharin for taking this effort. how as a CSOs, can play a role, can collaborate, can work with government agencies and to play this very important role to achieve the SDGs. Okay, so number 2, how best to implement this universal framework at the local level. We're talking about localization here. Number 3, given the scope and ambition of the SDGs, we must recognize, government must recognize, and especially during COVID, we must, the new agenda now is that government and the days of government knows best is gone. All of us realize that government alone cannot achieve the agenda, especially in the post-COVID environment. We need not only the what we call the a triple helix. Now we need the quadruple helix: public sector, private sector, and the third sector, as you all mentioned, which even NGOs and society themselves. Society cannot just stand back and say, "Oh, this is not my responsibility." And we have seen how COVID taught all of us that we need to work together, to strengthen the community, to strengthen individuals, community, society, and the world at large. So government must facilitate. So government, as I said just now, the days of government knows best is gone. Okay, continue. Continue, Arif. Okay, so there are 4 agendas that I would like to talk about the role of NGOs. Number 1, I really think, but you must understand my background. I always think that we are responsible. We need to hold our government to account. Ini mungkin macam kasar lah, but these are the kind of things that we need to do. We cannot just leave to the functioning of the nation only purely to our legislators or just to the government and like by people in the kampung, what we call politik atap zinc. The moment you receive 6 keping atap zinc, don't question anymore. Maknanya YB is doing the best. Okay, so we need to hold government to account. Number 2, we need, when I say we, I'm talking about the NGOs, the civil societies. You need to communicate the SDGs to a broader audience. When I talk about broader audience, is even today I'm speaking in English. Yet the NGOs in Sarawak, the majority of us, they speak Iban, they speak Orang Ulu, they speak all the indigenous language. But look at us, we are talking here online. I just had last week Sohakam, we had a discussion with one NGO, Save Rivers in Sarawak, about deforestation. You can imagine how many times we have to stop because our penans, the communities that were affected by logging, they have to find what do you call it, to get the internet connection. So I think 4 or 5 times we have to stop, but we have to bear with them. So the issue of timing should never be an issue. But when you talk about, trying to communicate SDGs to a broad audience, so these are things that, we have to bear and take into account. All right. Number 3, not only do we take the government to account, the private sector. Why I am telling this? I'm involved with 2 engagements. One in Sarawak with logging companies, and the other one, I was in a seminar with communities of the Orang Asli in Kelantan to discuss adalah one energy project, a dam that was played. So we thought that there's I will not name the company. So they have already built a dam, and suddenly we have the indigenous community coming. The Orang Asli came to Sohakam and complained about that. The prior free informed consent was not there. Now we are talking about rights. Do we teach our communities about rights, or is it just about funding, about just all the things to get our agenda across? But now people are already talking, those NGOs and the civil societies, especially those who are working with international NGOs or international organizations, that the issues of rights are very important. And number 4 of how we implement projects. Okay, continue, Hafiz. Nanti I will go into each one of them. Okay, how do we go or rather hold government to account? This is based on my discussion or engagement with some of the NGOs. Yeah? Number 1 is that NGOs or civil societies, we need to follow and participate in official implementation processes. And I noticed that in Peninsular Malaysia, you all have a better chance Like for example, budget engagement. I do see that NGOs, because when I was in the university, when the government invited us for what do you call it, budget, dialogues and things like that, the bottom up kind of thing, I see a lot of NGOs participating. But I don't see the Sarawakians, the Sabahan NGOs are there, or even the maybe a bit. Well, I'm not too sure. Even the orang asli, but later I think they do. Okay, so we need to follow and participate in all this implementation process. We need to be aware, or rather make our community or our masyarakat aware of what is happening. Number two, yes, there are. Hold on. Until I went and say move on. Sekejap. All right. Okay. The other one is to use the indicator framework. Yeah, we know the framework. I think just now, Sherin, you even have the progress and where we are. So, but not all NGOs knows about this. So these are the kind of things that we need to engage, to let our NGOs know that there are a lot of reports out there. Number C is to refer to the goals and targets in their advocacy work. So besides looking at the international or the national, you also need to look at your own targets. You need to have your own work, and also we did. NGOs also need to build NGO coalitions, not only at your local level, but also at what we call micro at that level, meso at higher level, and at the other one is at the macro level. So international, at the international level. So micro maybe at your kampong level, or at your Sarawak level, or Sabah level, or Selangor level. Then next level, maybe you go a bit higher, maybe ASEAN level. Then you go a little bit higher, or even much higher. So we want to see more Malaysian NGOs in international conferences. There's a lot of conferences out there, and I do see a lot of the NGOs, especially international NGOs, because I think I joined, I think 4 times I've visited, and only a few NGOs that I met there, these are women NGOs. So I met people like Zaina Anwar there. So they will be talking at the international forum already. So, so I would like to see more of our NGOs in this forum. All right. Okay. So next, continue. Holding government to call. So as I said, another thing that we need to look into is this voluntary national review. I think the government has this, most government has that. And recently, I know there are APPGs, they are currently having this review. Different countries have different names for it. So I do know that Professor Dennison, is part of this, and they are doing this right now. So you need to be part of this process. You need to be visible not only in terms of where you are, but your voice need to be heard. All right, continue. All right, continue. The next one, SDGs need to hold by, like as I was saying, states need to report to the United Nations. So I think we to ensure that that your visibility is there, try to be involved in this kind of engagement. So I do know that a lot of African countries, as I mentioned, Indonesians are very, very active. So if you notice that they are more visible than us Malaysians. So if we are there, normally we will attend the Indonesians or our other ASEAN members, but Malaysian quietly sit in one corner as usual. So, okay, continue. Okay, now, number 2, to communicate the SDG to a broader audience. One is, I think many of the SDGs are doing this, but basically what we need to do is that we need to collaborate to raise public awareness, to encourage citizens, not just your beneficiaries, not only your stakeholders, to create, general citizens like what we are doing today. So thank you, Sherin, to encourage citizens to make their contributions so that we take responsibility. So that not just because they are working with you, just because they are working or they are collaborating with you, but to the bigger audience. So society, we must embrace this to encourage society how to create demand for the SDGs, and to make the capacity of NGOs to put pressure. Government always think that putting pressure is a negative thing, but please don't look at it as purely negative. If you are in the government, especially the new government, especially you have a 100 days report card to publish, these are the kind of things that you need to report to rakyat, people like me. I want to see, what are you doing? Gone were the days when everything is right. Parliament now, almost every day we see you on Parliament, I mean on TV. So these are the kind of things that we want to see as ordinary citizens. Okay, continue. Number 3. Oh no, sorry, continue. Okay, sorry, continue. Okay, okay, another one, shadow reports. I remember CSW, the women's group have long submitted their shadow report. The government themselves took about 10 years to submit our report. So you see, the role of government, the role of NGOs are very, very important. So they can play an important role. Shadow reports, you know, whatever shadow reports that you may want to be engaged in. The one that I was reporting, because I was part of the Jawatankuasa in the women's ministry. Then, you know, then we had all these NGOs pressuring them. When are you going to submit your shadow report? No, we have submitted our shadow report. Where is the government's report? So government, to a certain extent, have to be, you know, to be accountable. So at the end of the day, they submitted, but that was after long, you know, there was a long lapse. And when the government submitted, I'm sure all of you quite aware of what happened in the UN at the time. Okay, so the next one is to establish, number 5, about rankings. Just now, I think Sherin, you did post on our WhatsApp where Malaysia is in terms of our achievement. So these are the kind of things that not only big or established NGOs should be made aware. These kind of reports should be made aware to, you know, not to say smaller, but you know, to those who are not aware of it. So NGOs must combine, collaborate, you know, to make aware so that you can have one voice, you know, to be part of that voice. So if the government don't listen, please come to Sohakam. So there are things probably, you know, like for example, human rights issues, please come to us. So, and also they use what we call advocacy tool or ammunition to reach our marginalized communities. You know, the issue of marginalization is very important, especially now during COVID. Yes, continue. I will need to go faster here because I still have a few more. Okay, how to hold the private sector to account. So this is also another important agenda, is that private sector can be the NGOs as your friend, but they also need to ensure that private sector also have a very important role to play. And I think if you're coming from Sarawak, and the one I mentioned just now, you know, in Sarawak, we have a lot of environmental related NGOs who are in Sarawak. So many of them were made aware through their advocacy work and also through their collaboration with international organizations. So there's a lot of pressure on the logging companies in Sarawak. You know, one example is one, as I mentioned, like for example, Safe Rivers. They are putting a lot of pressure to ensure that, you know, that our forests are being protected and things, and our rivers. So these are the kind of thing. Okay. Number 4. I think that's second last. Number four. Okay. The other one is to implement projects. You know, you can collaborate. Sherin, you did mention just now. You clearly mentioned that we're not doing it alone. We have our collaborators, and I think these also need to be mentioned to our other NGOs who may think that they are Superman or Superwoman. They can work together. In this present age, you can't do that anymore. You need to collaborate strategically. All right. So not as in a sense of patron-client. Not meaning to say you have one big or the other one is smaller, but it is all equal standing. All right. Okay. The next one. Continue. This one, how to get engaged in CSOs to achieve the SDGs. Okay. Sherin and all the other who are present here. What I want the word here, innovative and sustainable solutions. I know it sounds so easy as a term, but when we say innovative, what do we mean? How do you use big data now? How do you use all this Internet of Things? Gone with the days when government are still using, you need to fill in forms. Yesterday we were engaging with Department of Statistics. Our statistics is very, very static. And I am arguing for, we need to have dynamic database. So this is what we call innovative. And how can, I will share with you later. For example, we in Sarawak, our banks, for Bantuan Prihatin, they can only, Bantuan something Sarawak, Sejahtera Sarawak. They can only withdraw their Bantuan from one bank that is called BSN. And can you imagine the rural communities? First, they have to get the permission to cross and to go to the police station to cross borders. Okay, because there's only one bank in Miri town, and yet they are living 6-7 hours by boat ride. So can you imagine? By the time they reach the banks, the bank will be closed. So some of them already staying a night before just to collect maybe 300 to 400 ringgit. So we need to think of a way how to use this. The government can no longer use that kind of activities, for especially during COVID, during lockdown. We need to think of ways. Okay, that's number one. Innovative, sustainable solutions to end poverty in all its form and every way. Continue. The number two. How do we localize the global goals and monitor progress? You see, when we talk about localizing, a lot of times we blame the government for Malaya-centric, very Malaya-centric. I'm from Sarawak. We Sabahan and Sarawakian, we always have this issue. One size fits all. But now I'm beginning to think, sorry to say this, even our NGOs are also very Malaya-centric. The only thing that they do is that they change the venue. Maybe that project once is in Semenanjung. Now, maybe we should do it in Sarawak. Okay, let's go and find one place in Sarawak. Yang penting ada nama orang Ulu. Something like that. And a lot of these were coming to us. But what I can tell you, international organizations, international NGOs are a bit different. When they say localizing, it's a bit different. Okay. I really want you all to look into this, because these are some of the issues that some of the NGOs from Sabah and Sarawak felt. So these are part of the story I'm sharing with you. Okay, so that's number two. Number three, promoting citizen-centric. This one I don't think this is much of a problem. So CSO promote co-production, meaning to say they need to work together with the community to find the way to address the problem. We cannot solve poverty. We cannot end 100%. There is no such thing, because we either have we have three different types of poverty. One, absolute poverty. The other one is what we call relative poverty. Number three, multi-dimensional poverty. Somehow or another, there will always be poverty. So poverty will always be there. So what we need to do is what we call, we alleviate them. We may not be able to have zero poverty, especially now during COVID. As our friend have mentioned just now, thanks to COVID, now everything that what we have achieved in the last 10-20 years is almost, we are starting from zero. Okay, the next one, number four. How do we localize them? We need to what we call localizing the one. I really think that NGOs, we need to engage the community. We need to what we call it. We need to impart our knowledge. We need to, in terms of advocacy work. This is where I see international NGOs. They teach them, simple things like, for example, how do you do budget planning? And that one quite easy. But for example, they call it prior informed decision, for NGOs, how do you teach them when you talk about environmental, degradation, how to teach the communities, how to report, who to report to, where to report to, and all these techniques have to be done. Okay. All right. So never mind. I know some of you have done it. Okay. Continue. Okay. So CSOs is the voice of the poorest and most marginalized of citizens. I use the word there, voices of the poorest. It's not just B40. I am talking about B2%. The B40, the bottom 2%. These are what we call the poorest and the most marginalized. But I do know that due to practical reasons, sometimes we miss them. So this is the error of omission. So at the end of the day, the same people will be getting the same kind of bantuan from the government. They also get from NGOs. They also get from blah, 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 blah. And especially with government, it's much easier because they're very KPI driven. So at the end of the day, they need to report how many orang miskin they have helped. But when you hear, when we found out that if the government spent 530 billion, 530 billion, 7 packages to address COVID-19. And yet we have bendera putih. I do not know what color now, or the bendera. So we still hear people saying that, you know, it is they did not reach us. You know, we see Mercy Malaysia. We hear how Petronas, we hear Sejahtera, you all have been helping out to fill in the gaps. So meaning to say that what the government has done may not be enough, but on the other hand, what we worry, people like us worry, is that what we call error of omission. People who should receive did not receive the help, but people, you know, who do not qualify are the ones who receive the aid. So this is what we call error one, error two, meaning to say siapa yang layak tak dapat, yang tak layak pula dapat. So these are the problem. Okay. Number two, they are also agents of accountability. As I said, as I mentioned to you, you are the one, you know, to sumpit. If the government is not doing it right, terus sumpit. I always tell my NGO friends, you know, because we must remember that we work together with government. I'm not saying that, you know, it's you are against the government, but we need, you know, to work, collaborate with government, with other NGOs and other, you know, civil societies to work together, you know, so to ensure accountability. And then also another one is service delivery agents. And finally, I really hope a lot of our NGOs do this, because in Suhakam, we do notice we do have a problem when, for example, European Union, they wanted to engage in some NGOs. The few things that they want is good reporting, accountability, your your accounting system and everything, monitoring, all this. So a lot of the NGOs, especially in Sabah and Sarawak, you know, very small, you know, just budding, coming up NGOs, they do not have this. They were very passionate individuals. They had done a lot of work, but very limited, you know, in terms of impact analysis, reporting, and all those kind of things. So I think this is very important. Now, the second part of my presentation are just about photos. Okay, just to conclude. Okay, continue. All right. This one, I don't want to go into this. It sounds so very academic lah. No need. Ini cuma keluar exam aja. This is just to show on the left is what is your influence and CSO involvement at the bottom. The best one is only voice, meaning to say the voice is there, but the nature of interaction is only one way. Level of CSO engagement, none. So you all are only there, just window dressing. You know, when there is a meeting, orang jemput lah, happy lah. That is not the kind of engagement we want. What we want is sampai atas. The best is partnership. The best is where you can influence. So that is what this, because I'm going to share with you all this slide later. Okay, continue. Just my last one, I want to show photos. Okay, I am sharing this because not many of us are able to go where the orang asal are because of what we call. So I am sharing some of the experiences that, so maybe if there are any NGOs here, you maybe now that kita dah punya lockdown dah being reduced, maybe you can meet out and reach and understand the issues they are experiencing. Okay, continue. I'm just sharing photos. Number one, this is one of my respondents. The COVID-19 posed enormous risk to the physical and cultural existence and traditional livelihood of indigenous people. We can go to our supermarket, which is just 10 minutes in front of our door. This man has to rely on the forest. The indigenous communities rely on the forest. So what are the NGOs doing in helping them to reach out to find food for them, for the sustenance? That's number one. Number two, continue. Look at them. Because of the fear, they do not know what COVID is. These are the kind of things that we see. What they do, they impose self-isolation because they were not sure that what they do know is that it is they know orang Iban call it COVID. They keep on talking about COVID. They thought it's something like cubit. They have never heard COVID. So what they did, COVID-19 orang luar dilarang masuk. Dia sendiri pandai denda. Ini orang Iban ni. This is in JKKK Rumah Bajing. This was in the earlier period of NCO. So they were really frightened because the nearest clinic or the nearest pusat kesihatan is about 3 to 4 hours away. So they were very fearful of the COVID. So in terms of knowledge dissemination, How are we reaching out to them? The next slide. These are all photos. Okay. I was referring to food supplies. These are the kind of things we receive. I'm not saying it is wrong. What I'm saying is that our community in the rural areas, they used to have healthy food from the jungle, from the forest, from the rivers. And what do we give them? Satu, bukan main cantik lagi. Because these are the things that we eat. Gula, minyak masak, mie sedap lah tu. Again, beras, kopi. Okay? And this is shared by one of the NGOs with me. So this is what they receive. This is an Orang Ulu community, SEB, but this is not the only bantuan. Please don't get me wrong. This is not the only bantuan. They do receive other bantuan. But what I'm trying to say, they have shifted from a society that is so self-sufficient. Now they are relying on food aid. So, and what we are doing, we are continuing giving them food aid. Okay, continue. Okay, another issue is information. Many of our information are in Bahasa Malaysia, and in Sarawak, of course, they do have Chinese, we have English, Malay, and Iban. But then we have more than 40 sub-ethnic groups. The Peketan, the Punan, the you name it. Whereas the information is, this one is in Iban. Not too bad. But what about other sub-ethnic groups? So what are the NGOs playing? So these are the kind of things that we need to do. Okay, continue. Okay, and then the issue of absence of healthcare facilities and social security. So we need NGOs to come in to talk about health issues. So these are also an issue of vaccination challenges. I think YB Khairi have kind of, I mean, we do know the problem. So now they're using the single vaccination, and the state government is working very, very hard on it. And of course, what do you call it? The NGOs could not really work hard because these are all difficulties because of the MCO. You know, they cannot cross the borders. So, but the most important thing is to create awareness, because a lot of the Ibans are running to the forest. A lot of the Orang Ulu are running to the forest because for fear of COVID. And also when they know that KMM, Kementerian Kesihatan nak datang, they were worried. They said, oh, we do not know what is happening. You cannot trust them. No? So many of them ran away. So that is another problem. So we need to create awareness about all this. Okay, continue. This is, of course, everybody knows about it. In Sarawak, or even in in Sabah, lack of remote learning opportunities for our children. Kita ada buaya, tetapi kami tak ada wifi. So, oh, itu contoh buaya. Thanks, Go. Thank you, Go. I love Go. Everywhere I see her. Thank you, Go. Okay. Ada buaya, wifi tiada. Cabaran pelajar pendalaman Sarawak ketika sekolah ditutup. So, itulah dia. Okay, continue. I think I have 2 more slides. So, these are the thing. Involuntary isolation. So remote Penan village of Long Lamai in Sarawak placed under EMCO. So the only way to bring food is through using helicopter because it's locked down, because there is fear. So they said there are also even Penan women dies in Telangusan. You know, so these are issues which, as I mentioned to you, even many of the NGOs in Sarawak, many of them are based in Kuching, you know, in the big cities. These are not things that they are aware of. That's why I purposely share some of this, because they come to us to tell us their issues. Okay, there's I think I have 2 more slides. Continue, last one. Okay, look at that. Our orang asli meredah lumpur just to get their VPN. Bantuan prihatin. That's why I said NGOs need to help them to find innovative ways to get this bantuan. Inform the government, you know, in using, as I told you just now, big data, IoT, whatever you want to call that. We have so many intelligent people in the government. Why do we need to do this? All right. Okay. Continue. Okay. Look at this. This is very real in Sarawak. The one I told you. There's no ATM machine. Pakan is the poorest district in the whole of Malaysia. So look at these people queuing up just to go to this, what do you call that? The district office, I think a police station, just to masyarakat mohon disediakan kemudahan kewangan dan bekalan minyak, because first they need to get the document to cross the border to go to Miri town, you know. to go to the capital, no, not capital, to the city center, because that's where the banks are located. So these are the kind of issues. I hope NGOs can help us. Okay, continue. So this is the last one. What are the lessons that we have learned? Number one, we need to create awareness. And this is what I am doing. I know many of you already are aware of these things, but we keep on doing it. We keep on reminding ourselves. All right. Number two, we need to increase the number of NGOs. Government should not look at NGOs as, as opponents. They should embrace NGOs or even NGIs, to be part of the government process in addressing the post-COVID environment. Number three, because NGOs intimately understand community needs during the pandemic. They are the closest to the community. When the white flag was raised, it was not the government officers who ran to support them. They come later. I'm not saying they don't come, but it was the NGOs, the ordinary Malaysians. You and I, we responded. Some of us give 5 ringgit, some of us give 10 ringgit. Yang mampu maybe don't have ringgit, so maybe they give sayo. I see that in my community. We are the ones, the NGIs, the NGOs, and ordinary Malaysians. That we must recognize. Number four, NGOs must adapt to pandemic constraints to continue supporting vulnerable populations. Number five, they play a very unique role in educating the public about COVID-19 due to establish access and trust within communities. Communities, sometimes they don't trust private companies. Like in Sarawak, the logging companies have a trust deficit among the indigenous communities. And number six, NGOs are able to customize support. So this is the good thing about NGOs, to address nuanced needs. Very important. The word here is nuances, not the one that is collected through surveys. Government, universities are very good at collecting surveys, but it is not this one that is the true reflection. Sometimes the NGOs, because they know the communities, they just look into their eyes, just by the sound of their voice, they know the problems of the communities. But people like us from the universities, people like us from the government agencies, what they do, they carry 45 pages minimum of questionnaires to be filled in. Even that, not sure also whether you can get the bantuan, because you need to be included in the system. And the last and final point that I need to raise here is that NGOs, I must voice this out to the government, actually, not to NGOs. NGOs need external support to effectively respond to the pandemic. So continue for my last one. So with that, I would like to say thank you, terima kasih. And in the words of kami Iban, kita segulai sejalai. Sorry, Go, you cannot translate, because what it means is that we should work together. We should collaborate, to address. We call it segulai sejalai. I didn't write it down. I should have written it. Segulai sejalai seati sepedemu. We collaborate, and then we collaborate not only in terms of our act, but also in the way we think to address any sort of problem. With that, I end. Thank you very much, Sherin. I know I've taken so much time. I know Hafiz nak sumpit pun tak sampai hati. Sorry, Hafiz.
No problem. Thank you so much, Prof. And also thank you to Go for translating it in a rap punya cadence, very fast.
Oh, she's really good. Thank you, Go. Thank you, Go.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof. I think it's very, very clear. So there's no use for me to summarize or to take on key points. So with that, I hope Prof can stay on, because we have Q&A later.
I will stay on.
And from your point that you have highlighted, what I will try to do is that we will go straight to the panel discussion, where we have our panel members today, Puan Sherin, Puan Nadia Hanim, Puan Nelly Francis, Puan Encik Izziruddin, and also Professor Dr. Madeline, to look into some discussion points. So just to make it clear, it will be framed within four main focus, not only thematic, but action-oriented focus. Number one is on the revisiting of the role of NGOs, non-profits, CSOs in achieving sustainable development goals in Malaysia. That's number one. Focus number two is on the challenges and issues potentially hindering NGOs, non-profits and CSOs. But I believe this has been covered in Professor Madeline's presentation just now. And the last but not least, the focus is on establishing and also growing NGOs, non-profits, CSOs, and CSOs' roles in achieving SDG. Because Prof did mention about building capacity, building capability, and working in cooperation. So we will touch that in the focus session number 3 later. So without wasting so much time, before that, the session is supposed to end at 12:30, but I think to be fair to everyone, and also because since it is a very important session for discussion, if we may extend it a bit until 12:45 or plus minus, I hope that's okay with everyone here. Yeah. Okay. Number 1, on the focus on revisiting the role of NGOs. The first question for Puan Nelly of Yayasan Petronas, and also Puan Nadia Hanim, and also Puan Sherin. Referring to your extensive experience and works in NGOs, non-profits and CSOs, is there an increased awareness amongst your peers about SDGs, and how does it help in guiding the formulation and implementation of your initiatives? Perhaps Puan Nelly can go first.
Thank you, Hafiz. Yeah, if I may start, when the SDGs were introduced back then to support sustainable development activities through integrated, multi-dimensional joint programs, Petronas, as part of its sustainability efforts, has prioritized 7 of the 17 UN SDGs. Yayasan Petronas, as the CSR arm of Petronas, on the other hand, aligns itself to that, and therefore our programs and contribution complements Petronas' sustainability agenda, mainly in the SDGs reflected by our 3 pillars, that is education, community well-being and development, as well as environment. And as many of us are familiar with, a lot of the SCR activities, exactly as Sherin pointed out earlier, span across multiple SDGs. So when you do one, it covers, it also affects another one. So it is probably not as simple as it sounds, but with the focus and publicity given to SDGs globally, locally, definitely the awareness has increased in the past 7 years, be it among businesses or general public. And even more so today, when companies are expected to put in place and declare their sustainability performance and meet certain benchmarks. So for us in Yayasan Petronas, with our mission of enriching life for a sustainable future, we are aligned to the company's sustainability agenda. We are aligned to the Malaysia national agenda, which falls in many of these SDGs. And the awareness makes it easy and makes it come automatically to mind when formulating and implementing our initiatives. So the SDGs, I must say, helps in keeping everyone, the government, businesses, NGOs, NPOs, CSOs, conscious and guided with a common intent.
Okay, thank you, Puan Nelly. Maybe Puan Nadia, you want to add anything?
Sure. First and foremost, I wanted to say Assalamualaikum. Thank you so much for joining. I want to do a quick shout out pada hari ini. Saya sangat teruja dan berbesar hati kerana bersama-sama kami pada hari ini ada rakan-rakan kami daripada golongan OKU dan juga golongan penyakit jarang jumpa. So thank you so much for representing. Thank you so much Go and Kak Zu. Tabik hormat, as usual, you're always assisting us at the, when we need you the most. I also wanted to give a shout out. We actually have reps from Majlis Belia OKU joining us today. So thank you so much. Let's represent. Okay, so my sharing will probably be based on the multiple different groups that I'm in. If we're talking about children and child rights specifically, because as Prof. Madeline rightly pointed out, when we talk about poverty, it's multidimensional. It's never just about socioeconomic needs. Rentetan dia, I'm going to be bilingual, okay? It's going to always have a mix with so many other things. Now we've got terms like period poverty that we've never heard of before, or we never used it properly before. We've got poverty of the mind. We've got so many different types of poverty. And before dulu kalau kita fikir poverty means kemiskinan and that's about it. And that's far from being the truth because it's so complex and so fused together. Now we've even got issues like climate poverty. And yesterday we were talking about the impact of climate change and it not being an issue of tomorrow, but things that we are facing right now today. So in my experience, what I've seen in the last few years, definitely the awareness of the SDGs have improved, but I still say it's a long, long way to go. If we look at our national scorecard for Malaysia, 60 out of 166, not the best of. You know, when you're in the middle of the class or the second or the third quadrant, that means that it's like C lah. Nak kata baik pun tak, nak kata corot pun tak, but we certainly can do better. And if you're looking at the indicators, kalau saya nak backtrack balik, dalam 17 goals yang kita ada di dalam Sustainable Development Goals ni, walaupun natijah dia leave no one behind, most of the NGOs in Malaysia that I find either have a broad overarching commitment towards the SDGs or some kind of understanding of sebenarnya 17 goal ni actually is supported by 169 targets. Dan 169 targets ni sebenarnya kebanyakannya memang kerajaan-kerajaan yang ratify sepatutnya buat. Tetapi there are other tied in opportunities for progress that different sectors of society should participate in. If you look at it, dalam 169 target tu sebenarnya ada lagi 230 indicators that support that 169 targets. And most of the time kita tak tahu. Yang kita tahu 17 top level tu lah. So what happens is usually even when the SDGs were first launched, a lot of countries couldn't even come together to decide, okay, if these are the targets that we want to achieve for a world where no one is left behind, apa sebenarnya yang kita kena buat nak sampai target tu? Because zero hunger is huge, right? Or zero poverty is huge. What does that mean for every country? And for a small NGO like ours that are operating here or operating there, how do we then feed into that national target? So sebagai contoh kan sebenarnya 193 negara dah ratify the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. Okay, then that is actually tied into our SDG commitments, of course. Seperti yang Prof. Madeline kata, kalau tidak kita faham our place in trying to push the SDGs, tak adalah selama beberapa tahun dah the Coalition for Child Protection and the CRCM or Child Rights Coalition Malaysia have been steadily lobbying and advocating for the government to come up with its shadow report. We ratified the UNCRC in 1995. We did not necessarily submit our reports as per what we should, but Alhamdulillah recently we did. But it is, to your point, Prof, a continuous effort. And if we look at the efforts that have been moving for example, golongan kurang upaya di Malaysia, right? For the PWDs, we have the UNCRPD, the United Nations Conventions on the Rights of the Child, on the rights of persons with disability. That is also tied to a lot of the things that we are doing right now di dalam SDG. For example, everything to do with decent work with this SDG 8, right? Or for example, quality education. Kita dulu kata ada reject policy. What does that reject policy mean? How does NGOs assist in ensuring that we really open the barriers for equity? And the last, I'm happy to note that for the group of rare disorders in Malaysia, we are now in the process of trying to push for Malaysia to assist, to support us, so that di Persatuan Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu, we have the United Nations rights for persons with rare disorders. So doakan, it's a long journey. I'll stop there first.
InsyaAllah, kita semua doakan. Puan Sherin, I think you need to also, you have something to add on to the question as well?
Sure, boleh. Your question was about awareness. I think today there is a lot more awareness. When we started, we had, in 2009 for Yayasan Sejahtera, it was more the MDGs, right? The Millennium Development Goals, and it was crossing over to the SDGs. But in terms of our thinking and our planning too, memang, we look at this because these are kind of obvious things, I would say. But when you have the indicators or we have the SDGs, you kind of hook the things that you do to these kind of indicators. So awareness is better. I think we need to terapkan lagi dari segi aplikasi dia, and then the spirit of what it is. The indicators just gives you a measure of where you are in relation to all the different things that you need to do. But the spirit of it to terapkan is also quite important now, because awareness alone won't get us anywhere. We are, closing 2030 as the SDG punya time frame kan, and I know our colleague Izzy will speak a little bit more on that. So time is against us where we don't have enough of that sort of a movement that is going to push us forward. I just wanted to show this slide and sambut Nadia punya point tadi. As a country, this is just released by the EPU. We are number 60 out of 166 nations. We're not even halfway. And then when you look at the reporting indicators of where we are, there are certain indicators, or at least certain SDG goals that we don't even have information. So the inequality, addressing inequality, it's like zero, no information. So I think we can do better, and a lot of the CSOs and NGOs are doing it. The gap is reporting. The gap is measuring the impact against what we subscribe to in terms of indicators. We're not going to use all the 200 out there. Pilih the ones that is material to us, and then actually start escalating this so that then as a country we're reporting real things that are happening on the ground. Where we have gaps, we have to acknowledge and then find a way to move forward. So I rasa there's a lot of gaps now. The awareness is not translating into actual things on the ground, or if it's translating on actual things on the ground, we're not reporting it. We have a very poor culture of reporting, culture of documenting, culture of showcasing some of the things that we've done. And then also we hide behind the fact that sometimes we have not done very well, and then we don't want to report, because if we report, then we put our feet to the fire, right? So there must be this movement that NGOs, the CSOs, our colleagues in the donor community like Petronas and all that, Yayasan Petronas, demand that we actually have this concentrated effort. Thank you, Hafiz.
Thank you, Puan Sherin. Thank you again, Puan Elly, Puan Nadia, Puan Sherin. I think what the three of you have highlighted is actually interesting but quite confusing here, because while on the other hand, side, we did mention that we have witnessed awareness raising, increase of awareness. Even in the poll that the team from Yayasan Sejahtera put up just now, the results showed that 74% have applied SDG in your work. But again, this is not representative of everything, because it's a small group of attendee, with 9% of having no idea how to apply it in our work. But looking at the report published just now, again, which is not the real representation, because those are from governments, EPUs driven report, but with contribution from CSOs, the spillover index is very worrying, because that is, it's very low. It's even more worrying than getting position 60. So this is where the bigger question of, if the awareness is increasing but not reflecting the reality, it reflects again the situation which Professor Madeline highlighted earlier. The storytelling, there's somewhere that gets lost in the whole storytelling, in the whole narrative, which again contributes to this whole mismatch of action on the ground. And continuing with that discussion, putting that big question in mind, I would like to pose the next question to Encik Izzy. As you are the one that is more or less is more aware or is very aware with the works of the UN. So based on your opinion, what are the general expectations that the United Nations has for NGOs, non-profits and CSOs, especially the local ones, in playing a more leadership role in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals? Easy.
Okay, am I coming out loud and clear? Okay, terima
Loud and
kasih.
clear.
First of all, terima kasih Yayasan Sejahtera for inviting UNGCMYB. We are the private sector representative to get the private sector on board the SDGs. That's just a bit about us. Now, coming back to your question, I think Professor Datuk tadi already took away a lot of the thunder already lah in terms of the points. But let me just simplify it, because when I saw your very interesting poll, which is poll number 2, so some people were saying that they are already implementing it, ada yang kata they don't know how to implement it. So let me just simplify it, especially from the perspective. So I think in this day of climate emergency, and especially today when we are in the decade of action, because we only have 10 years to actually put ourselves on a path towards sustainable progress. Jadi I will simplify it to just these 3 things. One is that we need local content. because in our work, UNGCMYB, we don't have a lot of content, especially if we wanted to look at data. So that's number one. So the expectation is that the NGOs which are very close to the ground, to the grassroots, are able to actually translate the local goals, sort of, even if I can use the word, decomplex ataupun uncomplex the complex, which is the SDGs. But at the end of the day, I think the SDGs also, we need to realize that the SDGs are, if I were to put it in more familiar terms, it's a key results area with KPIs, which are the indicators, kan? Tetapi it's not so much about measuring for the rakyat, for the NGOs. Of course, you need to fit the data, but actually more important is actually bringing about a more sustainable lifestyle around the public lah. And whatever they do will be picked up by the relevant authorities in terms of measurements and so on and so forth, to actually translate that into our ranking and positions and so on and so forth. That's number one. So localizing goals is one of the expectations. Number two, Professor and also the other panelists also mentioned about innovation, monitoring and validation. This is very, very key, because data is about measurements. So in other words, with data, we are able to do all sorts of things. We will be more informed in terms of taking decisions. And this is where we lack, meaning we don't have data, and the NGOs can play a role in actually obtaining that data. But we will also need some sort of repository where everybody can share that data. In other words, not only looking at collecting data, but also dispensing or disbursing those data, which I think is very, very key and very, very, very important. Last but not least is, of course, which is, I think, is very, very important. So tadi you have localizing data, you have innovation, monitoring and validation, and last but not least is actually looking at citizen-driven governance. So we need people to participate. In other words, we cannot let government, especially those at Putrajaya, for example, sitting dekat administrative center tu, coming up with policies which they think is relevant to us. Rather, we need to work with government to actually inform government this is what we need. Unfortunately, I think that platform is not really readily available to us, and I don't like to actually go on the blame game, because we say the government macam ni, then we say this, we say that, but at the end of the day, I think we all have our responsibilities, but we need to actually play our responsibilities more effectively lah. So macam government, I think they are doing whatever it is that they're doing, tetapi we must also understand what is the role of government, and civil societies, we then must actually take on our role, because when it comes to civil societies, I've done many mini labs, kan, macam dulu ada pemandu punya mini lab. So we've done many mini labs, and one of the key success factors, bila kita dah letak kat papan-papan tu, dekat whiteboard tu apa, dah pakai post-it notes apa semua, one of the should I say end goal ataupun one of the key success factor is always stakeholder participation, kan. And this is basically after orang dah kata goodbye, thank you very much, dah keluar dah dia punya dewan tu, this is where everything actually falls down, stakeholder participation, because there just isn't any stakeholder participation. So just like Professor Dr. kata tadi, NGOs are not participating at international conferences, NGOs are not participating at the government level, kan? So I think it's all about leadership, it's all about vision, it's about drive, intention, beliefs, thinking and actions. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, GZ. I think you have just touched that sensitive and critical point where you highlighted some of the challenges, critical challenges and issues potentially hindering NGOs, non-profits in contributing to the achievement of the SDG. Therefore, I would like to ask the next question, also directed to you, because I think it's a continuation there. We all know that the progress towards achieving SDG is being hindered and is seriously off track. And with the additional burden brought over by by COVID-19 and the multiple threats that the global world and Malaysia is experiencing, well, where we know there's a lot of issues here, but what is the lack of a coordinated approach among government, private sector, the quadruple helix is the main factor that is contributing to this serious off-tracking from achieving SDG. And if yes, why is this the case?
Okay, thank you very much. That is actually quite wide, tetapi let me try and narrow it down in terms of dia punya answer lah. I think why it is that we lack this coordination, I think we can break it down into more or less three main challenges lah. One is instability, implementation, and governance. Malaysia, I worked abroad, and you know Malaysia is very, very famous for strategic planning. Because you know why? We have the money to actually engage all these good consultants to come up with fantastic looking blueprints, roadmaps kan. Tetapi in the implementation, that is where kita hanyut lah. Very, very bad lah in terms of kita punya implementation. When you go to Japan kan, I worked with NGOs in Japan and we looked at the Kyoto Protocol, looking at the rollout of the Do You Kyoto punya program kan. You can read dia orang punya dia orang punya municipal punya brochure about the program, and amazingly when you walk down the streets in Kyoto, you can actually see it implemented, bukan being implemented but already implemented. For example, if they say katalah clean streets in the back lane, you go to the back lane, you can sleep in the back lane. So in other words, there is strong implementation. So coming back, I was saying instability, implementation, and governance kan. So there are a lot of outside factors, you know, the trade war, regional spares. Also we have our domestic problems, our prolonged political punya spat and so on and so forth, which actually create this should I say that sidetracks us from what actually is our common shared interest lah, which is putting us on a more sustainable path lah. So too much focus, unfortunately I just have to say this, I think too much focus is on politics lah. It's a major problem for our country, and this leaves less time for us to actually be doing proper work for the government to do proper governance kan. So jadi when we talk about, when I say our politics ni, I don't mean about the politicians politicking, but I'm also talking about the rakyat also politicking, because politics is so ingrained in our life that you know, daripada kita punya association all the way down sampai kita punya ketua kampung, kita punya imam kat masjid, these are all actually political. So we are in such a situation that we need to break ourselves away from that, so that we can actually then really focus on the work that we do. And this is actually where the NGOs also can play a very, very effective role. Unfortunately, I just like to share that, you know, even NGOs pun, I know they have a lot of problems kan. There are, macam tadi doktor kata, there are 4 or 5 types of NGOs. There is also another category where I like to categorize the NGOs. Ada 3 categories. You have the NGOs who are supported by the government. Then you have the NGOs that are supported by the opponents atau the opposition. And then you have NGOs yang dekat tengah-tengah ni, yang really want to do work, spending their own money, their own resources, trying to get or trying to help or dispense services to the rakyat. And these are the people that don't have the access to the politicians, simply because whatever it is that they're doing is not going to help with their votes. And then the opposition also will take on issues yang can also tembak the government. Okay? So I think really this is where we must accept that if the situation is such, then we have to ask ourselves, how are we going to maneuver out of this? Because if it's already given, we accept it, but we have to try and look at ways to circumvent the issues now. All right, that's it.
Thank you so much, Izzy. I guess what you're saying is that with this multidimensional, super complex, sophisticated issues, it requires a transdisciplinary approach between NGOs and all the other sectors. And just to get some insights and also perhaps validate or agree or disagree with what we have shared just now. It will be nice to hear also from Puan Shireen, Puan Nadia, and also Puan Nelly on what you have shared on this challenge part. And specifically, is there adequate support and engagement by the government in encouraging the third sector to be involved and to allow contribution in achieving the SDGs? Any one of you can go first. The three wonderful ladies. Sure.
I'll go first. I think I'm blessed because I have a few vantage points coming from the private sector, coming from, Badan Berkanun, also being part of government and NGOs now, and doing my own thing in the private sector. So when I look at it across all the different sort of roles that we have, it's clear that there is lack of leadership. Whether we say it's lack of leadership in government, lack of leadership in the corporate, in the private sector, or even in NGOs. So where I think, we recognize the problems and we talk about it, right? So how do we move forward? I think we need to take ownership of, the agenda. We shouldn't be thinking, oh, government should be doing this and that, because at the end of the day, it's not like macam Prof katakan, government punya days of knowing everything, doing everything is over. I think we have a very highly educated, human capital in this country, and we all have great ideas, and we all want to actually work towards this national agenda of bringing the country to the next stage, right? So let's come together and really honestly look at what are the things that we can reasonably do as organizations, as a coalition of people who are concerned about this topic, and just get it done. Do it. Don't wait for other people to give you the policy, give you the direction and all that, because then we're losing time. So I posted in the chat tadi kata is a citizens movement approach now, and we all need to actually then leave our egos behind. And really look at the core issues of what we want to do for this nation, and take it on. Don't wait for other people who will decide different things for us that we don't even want to do. We have to take ownership of what the change that we want to effect. So I'm appealing to everybody in this group, all the representations of the panelists. We need to get together and just do something. And do something with high impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Puan Shireen. Puan Nadia, Puan Ellie?
Yeah, I can go next. I agree with Shireen. To us, that for us at Yayasan Petronas, we are also blessed to have the platform to be able to get the engagement done. But I guess engagements are never enough, because it's never, you'll never be able to get everybody engaged at one go, and the engagement, the communication has to continuously happen. We do hope that that more agency, be it public, private, non-profits, would be able to get into this engagement on a more regular basis, so that the sharing of information can happen for better understanding and meaningful insights to the real issues and challenges on the ground. And to pick up, as what Prof. Madeline mentioned earlier, the nuances specific to certain communities, because there are no one-size-fits-all solutions. And such engagement going deep into what's actually going on, which will only happen if everybody actually take part in this, will enable all parties involved to be more efficient in allocating resources and provide better support for better solutions. The engagement will also let us know, as a country, where do we stand in terms of achieving the national SDGs, not just where the country, the companies, as well as how everybody is doing in really getting the SDGs working. It will keep us informed of what works, what don't work, and that's where we need to acknowledge that certain things may not work and what we can improve. Having the overall comprehensive view, which will require, as Izzy pointed out just now, data, shared database of latest assessment. It's going to be very, very, very useful, especially during the current challenging time, to ensure that contribution to the targeted groups can be provided appropriately, equitably, especially for a much longer term and mid-term programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Puan Nelly. Mungkin Puan Nelly boleh continue terus.
Sure. I mean, looking at what everyone has already said, and I'm really happy reading the comments and the questions that are coming in the chat. And I think we're all talking about the need to balance between strategic, high level. I mean, yes, there's also comments about consultants and all that. But I think in reality, I was asking myself when I was listening to the presentation just now, do we need all NGOs and CSOs in Malaysia to know exactly what the SDG is about, what the indicators are? Personally, I feel it's a nice to have, but we're already at a stage where a lot of goodwill, institutional knowledge and capacity is already done, right? So one of the key things that we need to get the word out is the state that Malaysia is in right now, we're not looking for perfection. We need to move forward. Satu step pun tak apa, but together, continuously, multiple steps, we will have to inch our way out of it. And I think rata-rata everybody dekat sini dah acknowledge and accept that the government does not have all the answers. The reality of it, even CSOs and NGOs and corporates don't have all the answers. Long gone are the days that we have fractional advocacy on the table where people are just coming in and then fighting each other and blaming each other, talking about why you didn't do this and why you didn't do that, because, you know, we are in a raft stuck at sea. Yesterday, when we were discussing this, Puan Nelly rightly pointed out about that whole conundrum of, do we give them fish? Do we teach them how to fish? But the reality of it is, Puan Nelly, if I were to take that analogy that you shared yesterday, where we're at right now in COVID-19 is not about just teaching people how to fish. Hafiz also mentioned about the fact that we need to know siapa yang menjaga kolam ni. You know, is there a space that's sustainable for the fish to even thrive in future? If we're going to be teaching people how to have sustainable livelihoods, how to have jobs with dignity, it's not just about teaching them. Sebab bila kita ajar mereka tu, I still feel that we're coming from the perspective of we know more than them. And Prof rightly nailed it by saying, look, these guys know a lot more about their lives than we ever will. We're coming in, giving them all these plans on how to lead their lives, padahal kita tak mengambil masa. For me, any kind of NGO, the first thing kita nak masuk kampung orang kena beri salam, right? This whole idea of FPIC is something that rata-rata, including for the SDGs, we haven't done well enough. Free, prior, informed consent. We come in telling people what the indicators are, where they need to go. But do we even bother really listening with empathy about what do they need? You might want to, you know, give them internet connection or daringan simply because maybe the media did a really nice coverage of ada buaya, tiada Wi-Fi. But if that person or that community actually needs more on, I don't know, non-communicable diseases or access to clean water, if you understand what it is that they need urgently and you actually ask them first and have them and be part of that solution, then you will find that where we're heading and how we do things in Malaysia will be quite different. Very often, and I can bet you my last 20 cents, if you were to ask a lot of our, families, rakyat, colleagues, right, across Malaysia, not everyone will even know who the current Prime Minister is or the new lineup, but they do know they need food on the table. They do know that this COVID-19 thing is dangerous, and they do know that they want a better life for their children.
Thank you so much, Puan Nadia, Puan Nelly, Puan Sherin. I think what you have mentioned just now are also echoing what Prof has shared in her earlier keynote address there. So yeah, we are wasting a bit of time here, and to be respectful of time, there are a few other questions which we have discussed potentially that will bring highlights to this issue. But looking at the chat box on the right side of the screen, there are so many interesting and important questions that need to be addressed. Therefore, I will skip a few of the questions, except for one, which now is about the gaps between the urban and rural areas. And I know this is a very obvious question. There are gaps, yeah. But what do you think about this gap and the different level of not only awareness but action delivery in the context of urban and rural areas? Any one of you want to, one of the panelists, you want to answer this?
I'm gonna start first, Hafiz.
Sure.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm not gonna start with saying about the gaps. Yes, there are gaps. We know there are gaps. The urban people are perhaps more aware, and the rural people that we see less aware of it. One question that we ask, and Nadia also raised it earlier, does it matter actually if there is a difference in terms of level of awareness between the urban and the rural? Does it matter, or is it important for the communities in the rural areas even to be aware of the SDGs? Is it more crucial that our ACSR efforts offer these communities hopes and opportunities for a better, brighter future ahead? And among us, we debated this, and we observed that the gaps in level of awareness, with the gaps in the level of awareness, we believe in educating the beneficiaries and everybody who's involved about the intent and the SDG would influence the outcome, and in making it a sustainable impact. So when you believe they're still going to be carrying it, chances for success is always greater when people know what and why they're doing it. And I'm glad that this is consistent with what Prof. Madeline was saying earlier about communicating the SDGs to the broader audience, for us not only to reduce the gaps in awareness, but also for all to be able to discharge and discharge their duties and play their roles accordingly. Izzy, you mentioned earlier, it is supposed to be the way of life. Citizens practicing sustainable lifestyle. So if they are not aware of it, it will not allow us. It will not help us to be able to gain the maximum benefit of what SDG is meant for, comparing to if they know what it is that they're supposed, what the SDGs are all about. So yes, the gaps are there. We need to do more to be able to close the gaps in awareness. Thank you, Hafiz.
Thank you, Puan Elly. Maybe if you like to continue, Izzy and Prof. Madeline, apart from the issue of the urban and rural gap, is there also a potential misalignment or non-cohesive implementation or interpretation of planning into implementation?
Okay, if I were to look at it, especially in the context of misalignment of policies, kan? I'm only speaking in terms of federal and state lah, because there are gaps. Tetapi my short answer for the question, if there are potential misalignments of policies between federal and state governments, my simple answer would be no. There isn't actually a gap. Because the EPU coordinates all their own planning activities, and they work closely with MOF in terms of funding and so on and so forth. So in the grand scale of things, and the cascading actually is very, very effective. I've worked with Melaka state government, I've worked with Johor state government, right down to the Majlis Daerah. They all have their action plans. But I think where it is lacking actually is in the seriousness of actually implementing. Again, this is where I say, the drive, the intention, thinking, the beliefs, systems, will determine your actions, what you say and what you do. Just like when we say that stakeholder confidence is very important, tetapi you put stakeholder confidence at the bottom of your KPI, which then actually says it's not that important. And usually people just look at it and say, alah, this one cincai-cincai je, buat apa, jalan aja, boleh go. Even the senior management the CEO also is complicit in saying that this one boleh lah, janji nampak cantik, we report to our stakeholders, semua everyone happy. So it is not actually a matter of misalignment of policies, but it is actually again coming back down to implementation. That's my honest opinion. Thank you.
Easy. Prof?
Okay, thank you, Hafiz. Thank you very much to our panelists today, and thank you, Chair Izzy. I do agree with Chair Izzy when he was saying that there was no misalignment. Sebenarnya the way I look at it after looking at government policies and niat dia tu baik tau sebenarnya. If you look at on paper, Ya ampun, niat dia tu memang, because we have to go through documents, So KPI, they're very, very good at that. Malaysians, I tell you, our public sector, awesome. I think because we learned that from the British, Now, the next question is, ya ini critical ni, yaitu implementation. Yes, they're easy. Seriousness. Betul ke tidak ni? Like he said, I love when he said, alah buatlah je cincai-cincai. Not many orang yang setuju nak menyebut cerita macam ni kan. If you go to big government punya what do you call it, conference, everything is being, buat cantik-cantik, PowerPoint, awesome semua. And then another thing we're very good at, I've been involved in a few engagement, our use of consultant. I really don't know. Not only local consultant, yang international consultant. Yang I tahu dua, yang somehow we are engaged in. One is our education blueprint, and the recent one is our perpaduan negara. I mean, why do you need consultant? That one, never mind lah. Mungkin orang kita tak pandai, but we leave it to you to think or whoever that is. So that's number one. Number two, I always highlight this in my class. About targets and indicators. I think Nadia, you really nailed it. Tadi I puji dia. I know I love all these young people engaging in NGO. Okay, the word that I always use in my statistics class and also my development class, we meet the targets, but we miss the people. As far as data is concerned, ya ampun, almost 100% achieved. Especially because we are, if you look at our budget, because budget has to be disbursed at a certain time. So the things are measured by the budget. So there were incidences where budget were being, perlu dibelanjakan just another few more months. Itu yang Christmas shopping tu. So they will belanja like nobody's business. And then after that, bila datang lah audit, and then audit keluarkan cerita. So benda tu dah jadi macam, benda tu is benda biasa dah. Macam Cik Izzy, ini yang jadi bahaya dalam kehidupan. Bila benda yang macam tu dah menjadi kebiasaan. Dia menjadi biasa. Dan another thing yang macam I always look at media. When I studied media dulu, one of the things that we learn, kita menjadi lali, we become immune, we become lali kepada masalah. Too many issue kemiskinan. Buka surat khabar, orang miskin. Buka yang ni, minta bantuan. Buka yang itu, bla bla bla. So people become immune. Dia become lali terhadap masalah tu. So that people sekarang, you need to sensationalize poverty to make it sexy. Jadi sekarang ceritanya adalah ustaz pergi ke pulau. Ustaz kena marah, ustaz balik, something like that. Dan benda tu seksi. Tapi kalau Puan Sherin daripada Yayasan Sejahtera, Puan Nelly daripada Yayasan Petronas pergi bantu orang dekat luar bandar, alah boring lah cerita ni, So, we come to a point where masyarakat kita, media also plays a very important role, kita null our emotions. We become null. Numbed. Our emotions are numb. Jadi sekarang, contoh kalau orang nak minta bantuan untuk untuk orang sakit lah. Dia, macam kisah pembunuhan. Kalau orang tu just mati je, nobody reads the news. Tapi bila dia mati, kena cincang, kepala dia satu dekat Kuching, kaki dia dekat Pulau Pinang, people read. Itulah Madeline punya cerita lah ni. So basically what I'm trying to say, number one, we need to think differently now, especially in post-COVID. Many of us are thinking about what is the new post-COVID punya environment. We know what it is like. So what is the role of, what are the roles that NGOs can play? And then what is the role of the government? And what is the role of masyarakat secara umum? That we need to rethink now. We cannot play the same role that we have been playing before. Tadi Nadia was talking about, bercerita pasal kolam. Nadia, you are talking about kolam, ikan dan pancing. I'm talking about ikan pun dah tak ada. Ikan pun dah tak ada nak dipancing. Apatah lagi my fishing rod. So that is the thing. Bagaimana nak memperbanyakkan lagi ikan, mewujudkan pancing yang baru, bagaimana bentuk kolam yang baru yang kita nak supaya rakyat Malaysia ada jenis ikan macam mana yang kita nak. Pancing mana yang kita nak guna. Ataupun kolam yang di mana. Semalam we were talking about vertical farming in Sarawak. Can you imagine? Okay, thank you, Hafiz. Sorry.
Okay, thanks, Prof. Always interesting to hear your insights. I think Puan Nadia ada raise hand tu nak respond ke?
Yeah, if I may
Silakan.
add a little bit, we talked about urban-rural dynamics. I just wanted to play devil's advocate here and say never forget about the intergenerational dynamics that are also at play. We always think about urban-rural, those that have education, those that don't have education, but we also have other dimensions. For example, those that are abled or those that are legislatively termed as disabled, which I don't like that term, but anyway. That's one thing. The other is intergenerational. And I wanted to perhaps end my little sharing with a real-time example. In 2019, as you know, Malaysia had the SDG Forum. Alhamdulillah, UNICEF and a group of us had the opportunity to facilitate the SDG Forum for children. Now, I wanted to share is while we're talking about SDGs, what NGOs should do, ladies and gentlemen, the kids are moving and they're not waiting for us. Since 2018, OPIS have been working together with so many other stakeholders, teaching children about what the SDGs are, not only the UNCRC, we've been talking about how do we use social media better, their platforms better. When we talk about citizens action and bottom up, children have got SDG clubs in school now doing things, everything from vertical farming seperti yang Puan Prof cakap, including drone, including other issues of trying to solve their issue. For example, when we talked about Viviana and her trying to be innovative in trying to solve the issue of no daringan in her community. There are many Vivianas out there, many children who are doing amazing things. We are using, I wouldn't say old, but dated methods of communication to get what the SDG is about all across the board. So for example, a few years ago, maybe you might have known of this guy called Pico Taro, the guy who sang the Pen Pineapple Pen song. And if anyone of you knows, okay. There's also a Pen Pineapple Pen song by the same guy, Pico Taro, who talks about the SDG. So during the SDG forum, we actually taught all these children how to do the SDG PPAP, Private Partnership Action for Peace song, which was about the SDG. So children are learning and they're picking up really fast. And I think this speaks to the issue of the Malaysia Kita Pandai launch, kita masalah implementation. The next thing I want to add is we need succession planning. We need better think of we can't be the same people who are going to be talking about this all the time, right? What is our pasukan pelapis? And we need our pasukan pelapis to work with us from now. I wanted to end there. Thanks.
Thank you, Nadia. I think that very important kan. Kalau tak nanti just like what Prof mentioned tadi, we keep on repeating the same mistake. We do meet the targets but we miss the people. I nak tambah sikit tadi Prof ada sebut pasal lali. I remember this I studied in Indonesia and there was a brilliant professor in ITB that taught me. Dia cakap masalah korupsi di Indonesia ni memang membimbangkan. Tapi yang lebih membimbangkan ni yang para koruptor yang dah putus urat malu dia. So that is more worrying. So
urat
malu dia putus terus. Okay, I think now we can go on and on until 4 o'clock, but kita cuma ada 6 minit lagi terakhir. So I need to bring us all to the final segment, which is on moving forward, growing NGOs, non-profit CSOs, our role in achieving the SDGs. Yeah? And the next question is open to all. Satu, I will combine a few questions here. Satu, what are the things that you, as an individual or as someone who represents an organization, would like to change in empowering the third sector? And also combining this with a question from the chat box, from the Q&A box there. Is there a best coalition partnership among NGO in Malaysia to ensure that we do not work in silo and we can do this in cooperation, in partnership? Yeah. Okay, cukup lah, banyak. I think those two questions combined together.
If I can just go first, because very quickly, UN Global Compact is actually representing the private sector lah. Jadi I think what we need actually is very interestingly I've tried to find, but there is to my own research and if anybody can actually add, then thanks very much. But we need something equivalent to the UN Global Compact, but for the social sector lah. I think that is one thing to help us actually coordinate and function as a collective impact punya backbone organization who can actually play the role of coordinating the government and also the private sector lah. That's number one. Number two, just in parting, I just like to say because there's not going to be much time. I think all our problems as Malaysians, whether we're talking about the politicians, when we talk about the rakyat, when we try to apportion blame to everybody, complain, at the end of the day, I think it is basically coming back to all Malaysians as a society lah. We are not a learning society. We don't take on learning. We don't appreciate learning. We don't terjemahkan kita punya SDG punya buku-buku ke, dia punya report ke. Nobody is actually terjemahkan buku-buku ni so that it can provide access to all Malaysians lah. Jadi I think what I'm just saying here is that everybody needs access to knowledge, because knowledge is continuously changing, but unfortunately because of our education system, we have not and we don't have a learning culture. And that, ladies and gentlemen, because I believe in the primacy of society, because with society we can then have good custodians of the environment, we can then also bring about equitable economy, tetapi it starts with human resource, it starts with human beings lah, and we don't have that. Thanks.
Thank you, JZ. The others?
I added in the chat, actually, we have the CSO SDG Alliance, which is actually a group of all of the different NGOs and CSOs in Malaysia. We are actually clustered by the different SDG categories. Ada yang jaga poverty, ada yang jaga education, and there are many subcategories and groups in that. I think what it's clearly evident from what JZ said is the coordination between the corporate and the the CSO and the NGO sector. So maybe an olive branch for us to connect, so that way everybody's talking together. I'll end there.
Yeah, just to add to that, yes, we are aware of the CSO Alliance lah, tetapi I suppose we have to look at working at a more strategic level lah, because some of their initiatives are, of course, I would say, of course, good, but it does not actually address some of the pertinent questions lah, yeah, especially brought around this morning punya session. So they need to be more strategic lah, I'm saying.
Thank you. Puan Ellie, Puan Sharin, Prof.
Yeah. So Hafiz, in closing, yeah. Yeah, so I really love what Izzy brought up just now. Move away from blaming whoever. Let's just do it and contribute. We are talking about sustainability here, and the very premise of SDG is the fact that resources are finite, resources are limited. Today, unlike the past, we do not have to go and do it alone. We don't have to work in silo. We don't have to try to be a superhero. Gone are those days. We should look towards collaborating strategically, joining forces on our efforts. First, leverage on resources and expertise that are around us. Second, be able to reach and benefit more beneficiaries out there. Third, to not compete with one another for funding or publicity, but again, strategically work together. A rising tide lifts all boats. Together, we can do and we will do better.
Yay!
Hafiz.
Thank you, Puan Ellie. Yeah, Prof, silakan.
Okay, I just one quotation, because you dah quote someone from daripada Indonesia tadi. This is my quotation, just to end this one, and it has always guided me. Because I love to read the work of Bung Karno, Soekarno punya work. So dia pernah bercakap tentang kemiskinan. Ini I quote it in Malay. Orang tidak bisa mengabdi kepada Tuhan dengan tidak mengabdi kepada sesama manusia. Tuhan bersemayam di gubuknya si miskin. So we should never ever forget our role as members of society. We must need and continue to assist the poor. For those yang boleh bercakap, yang tak boleh bercakap, macam the voicelessness of the poor. Itu je, Hafiz. Thank you.
Terima kasih, Prof. I think that is a very masih terngiang-ngiang. It's the echo of Bung Karno punya.
Hebat ya.
Try repeat it.
Yeah, I think it's worth lah. Yeah, boleh kita langgar sikit waktu.
I will repeat it.
I was saying to Hafiz.
Hafiz.
Tapi cuma repeat memang tak ingat.
I selalu guna tu untuk my discussion. Ya.
Itu bukan pidato tapi sebenarnya amanat saya rasa kan.
Ya.
Puan Sharin, any
Thank
last
you.
before ni?
Yeah, I think everybody has spoken so eloquently about what we need to do. So I don't have much to say, but except for the fact that maybe it starts with us as individuals. How do we impact our immediate surrounding. And then lepas tu sort of, grow that into an alliance that's strategic, that's, common purpose and all that. So Alhamdulillah, we'll start with this group, inshallah, then see how we move forward. So we're happy to host more sessions to talk about how we come together. There are a lot of people in the chat box saying that they want to be part of this, inshallah. And, Yayasan Sejahtera can always be the convener of ideas and execution, which is more important. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Puan Sherin. With that, I would like...
Thank you to the audience.
Terima kasih
Thank
semua.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ya, belum. I kena tutup dulu dengan...
Dia kena close dulu.
Tak baik tau kita terus balik macam tu je. Okay, just share with you 7 points from the ni. Number 1, roles and responsibilities is very important. How to implement at local level, localization agenda. Number 2, cooperation and collaboration. We need to cooperate, cannot work alone. Number 3, becoming number 3 pula, number apa ni? 4, being the critical friend for check and balance and to remind each other. Nombor berapa dah tak ingat dah. Societies as the custodian to ensure that everything is well guarded. Nah itu je kot dah bersepah dah punya note. Okay, I nak pulangkan balik majlis ni kepada Pau from Yayasan Sejahtera, and then we can go have our lunch. Silakan Pau. And thank you for the panelists and everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Hafiz. Thank you all the panelists, Dr. Madeline.
Thank you.
It has indeed been very energetic. The energy today is unreal. I love it. I really love it. All right. Before we close off, we would like to play a video by Yayasan Sejahtera. For this, I'd like to cue Haris. All right. So at Yayasan Sejahtera, we have a running campaign at the moment. It's called Kembali Sejahtera, where the funds will be used to assist marginalized or B40 communities in relief by providing them food aid and also hygienic packs, and also in recovery efforts, where we will kind of help them keep a positive cash flow for their income generating means. Most of our members in our communities are owners of micro businesses, and during the prolonged PKP, prolonged MCO, they've depleted their savings, they've depleted all means of income, and through Kembali Sejahtera campaign, we intend to help reignite or kickstart again their means of income. All right, so before we close off, there's another thing that I'd like to share. We will be holding a pre-conference workshop on the 11th of October 2021 from 9 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. The topic of the workshop will be building community resilience and best practices. We encourage managers, project managers, policymakers, and personnel involved in sustainability from or even CSR, corporate social responsibility, community development at private organizations, NGOs, foundations, or even government employees to join this workshop. It is limited to only 50 participants. For NGOs, the fees will be 300 ringgit, and for corporations and the others be 450 ringgit. The workshop will be conducted in collaboration with Mercy Malaysia, who will be sending top trainers, Ms. Pavitira Selvaras, Mr. Shahril Idris, Mr. Thomas Chia, and also Mr. Imran Razak. So before we close off, please.
Sorry, Hafiz, Pao, can I add?
Sure.
The fees is going towards proceeds for our programs. So, it's going into the projects that we're going to do with Mercy Malaysia on building resilience and, documenting best practices. So for the corporates, do come on board. And if you can sponsor some of your NGO partners to come on board, that would be great. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Puan. Great point. Thank you so much. So like I said, it's limited to 50 participants, but if we receive or if we get overwhelming response or intention to join, perhaps we could increase the capacity, inshallah. I would also like to invite all of you to follow Yayasan Sejahtera on our social media. We are on Facebook and Instagram. Just type in Yayasan Sejahtera and you'll find our page. Even today's webinar has been shared on our social media and past episodes as well, past webinar sessions as well. All right, with that, I thank you all for
I'm going to interrupt you again just before
sure.
we leave. You want to talk about our IDEP on the 15th of October and the series that we are hosting now to actually culminate into the main conference. Just for those who have new to the series,
new to us,
they know that we are working towards that one main event, right? Sorry, Karen.
Yeah, no worries. So today was the 5th installment of pre-conference webinar. Our main conference will be on the 15th of October. Inshallah, we have invited a few, I would say, notable speakers. Tokpa, inshallah, should be one of our speakers. So also stay tuned. Watch our social media. We'll be announcing the main conference programs on there. Yep. So with that, I thank you everyone for spending what is about close to 2 hours on a Saturday morning. I hope you would go on to have a good lunch after this and enjoy the rest of your weekend. I have been Fauzul Hazwan bin Khalid from Yayasan Sejahtera. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Karen, thank you.
Thank you, Nelly.
Hafiz,
Nadia,
Nelly.
And Hafiz.
Thank you, Puan Nadia.
Zuraida, our jurubahasa.
Wah, mana go tadi nak pergi Nadia?
Yeah.
Go. Cik Ruz, Ezzy juga.
Thank you. Thank you.
Keep the conversation going.
Are we gonna do a group shot before we jump
Yeah,
off?
yeah,
Yes, we should.
Boleh.
Yeah. Do it.
Haris, tolong.
Masuk sekali.
Ready.
Go, masuk sekali nak gambar.
Mana go? Go.
Tu dekat tepi tu. Alah masuk lagi. Oh.
Sombong go.
Kawan-kawan sejahtera tak on kamera tu.
On camera.
Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Lagi sekali.
Nice.
That is just now.
1, 2, 3. Alright.
Yay.
Thank you. Take care,
Thank
everybody.
you, Yayasan Sejahtera.
Thank you.
Bahasa sangat hebat. Orang cakap laju pun dia boleh laju. Oh my God.
Prof Matt
That
kalau
is
cakap,
amazing.
semua orang glued to the screen.
Thank you.
Kesian go nak translate. Kesian go nak translate.
Like that.
I cuma tahu satu je, buaya.
Thank you.
Itu hashtag kita hari ni ya, buaya.
Thank you. Nice meeting.
Okay, that's so much.
Nadia, thank you Nadia. Nadia nanti nak contact you nak cerita PWD.
Yeah, we connect everybody.
Yeah, we can connect.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Kena mengetih ni. Sherin kena mengetih ni nak Sherin.
Boleh, jom.
Okay.
Saya leave dulu ya. Assalamualaikum.
Take care. Salam.
Take care. Stay safe.
Bye.
Thank you, Hafiz.
Thank you, Hafiz.
Thank you, Puan
Great
Nelly.
job.
So kita tak buka open mic at the end for people to speak up. They were running short of time, kan? It was like quite neat.
But the chat was quite active.
Yeah, it
all the
was, right?
time.
The
Yeah.
energy today is really
Good,
good.
ah?
Rasa kejap je time.
Kan?
Mm.
Actually, today was quite nice.
Okay. So
Semua very powerful speakers. Semua,
I
you know,
think so.
yeah, brought about very good points.
Kan? And it matters a lot that the chemistry and the way we connect, even online, seem to jive, kan? Ketika sometimes when you do sessions like this, kalau the speakers all tak jive, then it becomes like
Macam ada gap. Kan? Ni tak ada gap. Yeah.
So good.